everyone, and welcome to today's video all about Blue's diet and habitat. So bearded dragons come from Australia, and we've actually designed her enclosure to look very similar to some pictures of Australian rocks that we saw. So the rocks that we've got here are quite reddish looking, and they're also very thin. And we really wanted to try and make her enclosure look as realistic as possible for her. So the soil mix we've got in here is part sand, part soil, just to try and emulate what it would be like for her in Australia, where it's obviously slightly more sandy where she'd normally come from. But she has to have soil in there so that she can still dig and lay her eggs. So we tried to make it as natural as possible. Now we also have her plants in her enclosure as well, to try and give her a slightly more natural way of life, and bugs in the soil as well. So every morning she gets additional greens. Now we have to give her these in the morning because Blue is a little bit fussy, and she used to be really bad at eating her greens. So if we gave her greens and her bugs at the same time, she'd eat all her bugs and then she'd leave her greens, just like I'm sure some people might leave their vegetables. So instead we now give her salad typically in the morning, and then we give her bugs later on in the evening, just to make sure she eats both. Now, as I mentioned, she does have bugs in the soil, and she does have greens, for example, some herbs, in her enclosure anyway. However, we just want to make sure that she gets a very varied diet, which is why we also give her additional bugs that might be slightly different bugs to the mealworms and the morio worms that are normally in her soil. So we might give her, for example, grasshoppers, or we might just give her a few more just to make sure she's had enough, in case she can't find many when she hunts. And we also give her different types of salad than would normally grow. Our polytunnel for our desert is very, very nice and hot, so sometimes our plants don't do very well in here if they are not well suited to a very, very hot climate. So we like to give her some additional greens just to make sure she's got enough. So one of the main things we considered when building Blue's enclosure was that we really wanted to give her different levels. So bearded dragons, as we're going to discuss in our adaptation video, are very, very good at climbing. So they've got different length toes which help them to grip onto different things. So we knew that we wanted to give her lots of different levels in which she could go to if she wants to. Now in winter at night, as all our rangers know, we lock Blue away into her hot space just to make sure that she doesn't sleep outside in one of her gardens and get too cold overnight. But during the summer, she's allowed to roam and sleep wherever she wants. She does still normally return to her hot box, because that's her favourite place to sleep, and it's quite nice and secluded in there. But she can be found sometimes sleeping in one of her herb gardens instead. So when we were designing this, we knew that we wanted to give her different levels so that she could practice her climbing. Now, a recommended size bearded dragon enclosure that you might, for example, get in a pet shop is actually smaller than our hot box. So Blue has got 4 times the size of the recommended size for a bearded dragon enclosure. We knew we wanted to give her a really, really big space because we know how active she is. Now she actually uses all of her enclosure. We'll often find her in a different place when we go and check on her during the day. So we know that by giving her a really big enclosure, we know that it's the best thing for her because it's enabled her to be a lot more active than if she was in a smaller enclosure. So with enclosure sizes, it's always really important to remember that that is a minimum, and it's always better to give an animal a lot more space if you can. And our Blue definitely loves it, don't you? So thanks very much for everyone who's tuned in to watch our video today. Tune in tomorrow to find out more about Blue's adaptation. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and share the video. Bye!